By the time you reach the castle gate, you're surrounded by other retreating soldiers, even a handful of knights. The guards hesitate to open the portcullis until one of the knights order him to allow you entry in a breathless yet still somehow commanding and entitled voice. You all squeeze through. You're nearly crushed between clanking hard steel. You're among the lucky ones, as you soon find out that the guards drop the portcullis not long after you enter the main hall. Shouts of panic and pleading come from behind, and then laughs and demonic laughter. Neville's tongue. Did they overwhelm the maiden Avis and the rest? You ask. No one answers as you're jostled through the hall by the press of armor bodies. You unsling your bow and grab Thelma's shoulder with your free hand. Show me the nearest arrow slit. I shall send these fiends a measure of pain. No. Thelma knocks your hand away gruffly. The Duke has his own archers. We have our duty, joins in Horam, and our skills, says Thelma. More to the dwarves other than to you. We have no guide, says one of the dwarves, a younger one by the look of him, with no grey in his long beard. Who needs one, says Koreg. I can smell a gibbering rock runt better than any man. You mean a goblin, you say? Start with the dungeon, says Thelmer. They'll dig deep. I'd wager my last finger that's where they're breaching. I know where the dungeons are, you blurt out, nearly shouting in order to be heard above all the noise in the entrance hall. Thelmer raises his eyebrow, and the other dwarves stare at you for a moment before Korek shouts, lead us, boy. You take the lead. I didn't think this chapter was this fucking long. Holy shit, you take the lead, happy to get away from the shouting of the soldiers and the snarling of the demons beyond. With night having fallen, the halls having a different feel now, with only lanterns for light, although you realize this isn't what is strange, rather it is that the shadows are gone. The concoction you dripped into your eyes is powerful. In a sense, you find it disturbing. You've always enjoyed the shadows cast by lanterns and guttering torches. Even when you were a boy, you learn to not fear shadow like most children do. As a young thief, shadows provide mystery, a hiding place, even a measure of romance. But now with your newfound sight, you realize your friends, the shadows are not real and never were. Amongst themselves, the dwarves speak in very low voices. Their strange words roll like intimate thunder. What are they saying? They pray for the dead, says Egra, her voice uncharacteristically respectful. They pray that their souls will go to Bonder's Hall. They speak in the old tongue of dwarves. You're not sure since you did not account their exact number, but it does appear there are fewer elves. There are 8 now. Before there have been 10, maybe 12. No, there were 12, I think. It only highlights what's a newcomer you are in this group. It's probably just as well that you're ahead of them, so you can give them space for their grief. Favor increases too. The way is familiar enough, despite you not having much time exploring this massive fortress. Growing up in winding alleys, you develop a talent for finding your way. Now you descend a stairway that you remember from your chase of Thog's Godling. This shall lead you to the dungeon. What mischief did you do back there? You ask Agra. What do you mean? Asks Agra innocently. You ask Agra, okay. All those strange words you spoke and the glowing, I don't know exactly. It's like you made me a beacon and sorely provoked the demons, you say. More than the demons, says Agra with a lilt in her voice. Let the gods expend their strength upon each other. The demons and the Thogs with their rage versus Alathian allies with their blind righteousness. Glorious destruction. There's nothing glorious about the death of good people, you say. No doubt this entire city will be destroyed. Spare me your predictably short-sighted wailings. All mortals were born to die. Their lives but a joke. At least there's one. These ones shall end with a reasonable punchline. I enjoy a laugh more than most, but I am not like you, Agra. I know, says Agra, her voice elated. This is what I like most about you, champion. Distracted as you were by Agra, you have noticed that something is not quite right. You halt. The dwarves have finished their funeral chanting, so you feel comfortable speaking to them. The lanterns are extinguished. You whisper back. You might not have noticed that, since you can see in the dark now, yet now the colors are more uniform and faded. Thomas looks over the nearest dead lantern and then strains to see down the hall stairway. Not a good sign, he says. Lead down the stairway and try to listen. However, it's impossible to hear over the jingling armor of the nearby dwarves. Turn back to them and motion for them to stop. They do. Yet some clinking continues, thanks to the dwarf or two fidgeting. Korek raises his beard as he takes in a great breath. He scowls. I smell them. Beardless cave curs, wargs too. Cave curs, you mean goblins, you hiss? Korek nods. Can we just call things by their common name, you say? We are too late, whispers Horam, pointing at the dead land. Cutting the lights is the first thing they do. Again, you try to listen, but there's more clinking. Grit their teeth in frustration. Neville tongues. Could you wear any more armor, you say sarcastically. Korek raises his eyebrow in surprise. Of course, we dwarves are more than strong enough. It's just we prefer some flexibility and shh. You hiss with your... oh, you didn't get the irony. You hiss with your finger up to your lips. Dwarves all fall silently. Their armor continues to clink. Finally, you whisper up the line, "I'll scout ahead." Thelma pauses for a moment and nods. There might even be what passes for dwarven respect in his eyes. "Stay here, stay quiet. Expect trouble," you whisper. And without waiting, you turn and creep down the stairway. "A dangerous course, champion," says Egra. "Safer than bumbling into an ambush among these noisy dwarves," you say. When you've gotten some distance from the dwarves, you crane off neck and listen again. Far off, there's a clanking of steel, perhaps armor. There's a rhythmic scattering sort of noise, like nails against rocks. Color continues to become muted as you descend into the greater darkness until there's nothing more than hues of grey. Nevertheless, you can see clearly that you spot the body of what must be a servant, given the uniform he is wearing. The middle-aged man has an arrow in his back, the shaft broken. Perhaps the man fell on it. He has other wounds too, likely also arrows, but if so, these arrows have been retrieved. Looks like the dwarves were right, you think. You had hoped that the lanterns were simply out and then Korak had been smelling his own imagination. It would have been nice to play the hero, but without actually being a hero for once. You freeze in place, listen again. This whispers someone or something along with a scuttling noise. Not wanting to make yourself obvious with a potentially glowing sword, you keep it sheathed. Unsling your bow and notch an arrow. You will need more than one arrow, of course, since everyone knows goblins travel in packs. Perhaps you could shoot one of the little beasts and let the rest chase you to the waiting axes of the dwarves. Sniff the air, but all you can smell is mustiness and wine. You continue on another few seconds until the stairs end in a long wine cellar with another exit across from you. This must be where they store the cheap stuff, because the wine is in large barrels stacked on racks. There are drag marks of dark gray, perhaps wine or blood. You can't tell with the colorless night vision. You follow the drag marks on the floor as you creep around a row of barrels. Sure enough, you find two more human bodies. These ones are hacked up as though by long knives of some sort. Suddenly, another smell hits you. It's familiar and terrifying. Warg. There's a click. You hide behind the barrel and peek out. Into the entrance, across from the stairway, rides a warg with a goblin mounted atop. The goblin is armed with a short bow. The warg slinks in and drool hanging from his massive jaws. I think we should shoot the dwarf because he'll probably be able to smell us or something. If not for that one click of what might have been his claw a second ago, you would not have heard him at all. For something so large and savage, he moves with amazing stealth. You haven't seen any wargs in your life, but you haven't seen many wargs in your life. I was to say haven't seen any wargs in your life, no. But this one looks particularly huge, probably the size of a riding horse. That's fucking huge. 6 more goblins follow the warg, moving silently, their large eyes alert. All of them are nearly naked with only dirty loincloths. 2 of them carry short bows and rest carry short swords, some of which are splattered with what is likely blood. Egra, let's give these butchers a fireball, eh? No thanks, she says. Such base spells do not please me or my father at this time. The warg stands up in the stairway from which you came, the escort of creeping goblins following close behind, 2 abreast. I have a clear shot. It'll be very amusing. Do not patronize me. Burning goblins is not that funny, says Egra. Combat is never funny. Now the opportunity is gone as you think the last goblin disappear up the stairs. This isn't shaping up to be a good outcome, at least not for the dwarves who are expecting you to return, not a team of stealthy goblins led by a massive warg. You have to think fast. Your options are apparently constrained to Egra's favorite spells right now. You cast a slippery spell on them, hope it gives you your sword the advantage. Another option would be to go invisible, wreak havoc among them from behind with sword and bow, or you could transform into something fearsome and fight them. A giant comes to your mind, since such a body ought not to be too difficult for you to learn how to quickly use, since it would just be you, only larger. Ceilings in this chamber are high enough to accommodate a giant. I think invisibility just doesn't work because the warg will be able to smell me, and slippery spell, I mean, some of them would get caught in it, but it's not enough. I think transform into a giant is the only way to do it. So we're gonna do that. From what you have seen, the giants are allies of the goblins, so what could be better than to turn into one and betray them? Make me into a giant, you say in your mind. Oh, what mayhem is in store for them, says Egra. The strong hum in your body as the floor shrinks away. Soon you're standing perhaps 12 feet tall. You're dizzy for a moment, but one massive hand on a rack for steady yourself. This gives you an idea. Funny but dark, like a slapstick funny, only with blood and death, okay? Morale increases 4. My morale is 23. Holy shit. You grab 2 barrels of wine, one under each of your massive arms, and stomp to the stairway. About 50 meters up the stairs, the warg and the company of goblins have turned to stare at you. You set one barrel down and throw the other with both hands. The goblins scream as they try to get out of the way. but there seems little room in the narrow stairway to escape. The barrel smashes on the leg of one of the goblins and wine explodes. Without wasting one moment, you throw the other one. This one slams into a clump of them, crushing at least one of the goblins. The warg snarls and shakes his wet fur. His wide-eyed rider draws back his bow. You duck back into the wine cellar as the arrow clacks against the floor. Where you had been standing a moment before, you shout with glee, your voice low and booming as you lumber over to the wine and grab on the barrel with both hands. The wet enraged warg scrabbles into the chamber, slipping slightly as he takes the corner, and you barely have time to throw the barrel before he's on you. The warg leaps as your barrel smashes into his face with a wet crunch. The wagon rider hit the floor. You don't waste a time. You kick the wolf with all your strength. Feel ribs break under your blow, and the wolf slides across the floor, his rider screaming, his legs strapped underneath. You leap forward, clipping your skull against the ceiling, and land with both feet on the wolf. The goblin lets out a higher, blood-curdling scream as you fully crush his leg under the wolf. As you finish stomping the head of the wolf and the goblin, making a mess of the sole of your foot, you turn to see the remaining goblins now at the entrance chamber, staring at you with wide-eyed horror. You snatch up another barrel of wine from the rack, and the goblins run up the stairs. You hear it clanking and jingling from another direction. Several new goblins flood into the room opposite the stairway. These goblins are armored and carrying spears. They're clearly surprised to see you, and they hesitate. You throw the barrel at them. The impact is a chaotic clang of steel and screams of terror as wine bursts out in all directions. The goblins slip on the wet floor as they scramble, and some seemingly unsure whether to charge or retreat. You hit them with another barrel, smashing one goblin and freshly drenched the other. What fun, shouts Agra. You're surprised the goblin rally and charge, perhaps a dozen of them, sliding a little, screaming a battle cry. Meanwhile, more goblins are streaming into the room. You hurry behind one of the large racks of wine barrel and shove the rack. Boom, the entire rack falls, squashing several of the onrushing goblins, hampering the rest with the debris and flood of wine. There are fresh clanks from the stairway. A deep-throated war cry. A headless goblin corpse falls into the to the chamber from the stairs, following closely by the dwarves, Thelmer in the lead. The goblins, still recovering from your wine attack, are soon being hacked at pieces by dwarves' battle axe from behind. You join the dwarves in the assault, kicking, punching, and bashing the goblins' skulls against the wall. The goblins try to retreat, but it's too late. The stocky and sure-footed dwarves slosh through the nearly ankle-deep wine. How much wine was there? Fucking hell, within the cellar, covering the exit, cutting down the remaining enemies. When the dwarves are breathing heavily, by the time the last goblin falls, Herman looks at you and shakes his head. What sort of sorcery is this? Agra laughs in your mind. Your body jingles and the floor rushes up. You're back to normal. Enjoy surprising friends and foes alike, you say with a grin. Lucky we didn't cut your legs off, says Koreg. We have no love for giant, adds Horam. Recognized your ugly face under that little beard, says Thelmer with a glint in his eyes. Bondor's breath, what a mess, says one dwarf with a chuckle. Wine is for elves, but even still, this is a waste, finishes Horam. Stop flapping your chins like a couple of gnomes, says. Gnomes exist in this world or something? Says Thelmer, who is now peering over the door. There's bound to be more rock humpers where they came from. He looks back at his party, his eyes roving. Yell, go see a priest about that. Who the fuck is Yell? The one they must call Yell catches his neck as blood runs in between his fingers. 'Tis a scratch. Thelmer says something in what must be their dwarven language. Yul nods and limps up the stairway. One wounded for us, that only a scratch, says Thelmer. He smiles at you. You know how to handle yourself against the toe-biting troll pokes. You puff up your chest and are about to summon up your most gracious yet humble nod when interrupted by a shout. There, yells Thelmer as he begins charging towards the exit. Sure enough, the several goblins outside staring. They yelp something, probably an exclamation of surprise or a curse on the dwarves, and then they run. Gibbering, beardless tunnel worm, shouts Horam as he joins Thelmer in pursuit. Soon you're all out in the hall, chasing after the hoarding on. When is the chapter going to fucking end? Holy shit, is it long.